All right, are you ready for the last topic before our next test? I know there's a lot of information. What we're doing this time is we are multiplying these complex numbers. It's a little more challenging, but not much. You just do the usual multiplying like we're used to, except there's one thing to watch out for. So let's take a peek at this example here. What do you do to multiply this? What we have here are two complex numbers, but you don't have a plus or a minus there. What you have instead is basically an understanding that you're multiplying stuff together. How do you do it? FOIL. Okay, if you say so. So we get 20, we get this, we get this, we get that. Just like we're doing two binomials multiplying together. Pretty easy. Okay, what do we do next? What I did is I combined these guys to get 27i. But here's the thing to watch out for. Here's the thing. When you FOIL, you have this one term that is I squared. From the previous lecture, what is I squared invented to be? I times I was meant to be -1. I squared is -1. And so, guess what? -1. That's the story. And I have this silly thing. It always reminds me, hey, I went beyond the looking glass into Wonderland, but then I squared with another eye and I popped back out and I come back to reality. So I was I, but I met another I, we squared, and all of a sudden, what do you know? I'm -1. I'm in real number land again. Okay? And then you have to carry this through. That's a plus 14, and then 20 and 14 make the 34. Okay? So multiplying like this is not hard. Let's look at a couple of examples. In fact, if you want to pause and go for this one, go for it. Totally fine. All right, so -24. 8 times 5 is 40i. There's imaginary. -12i, another imaginary. And guess what? What is that? Plus 20i squared. Back to reality, right? Two more steps. -24. Let's combine the imaginary pieces to get what? 40 minus 12 is 28. What? I. And then what am I going to do here? Plus 20 times what? -1. Back to reality. So we have -24 plus 28i minus 20. And there's a tradition to always put the real part first. I'm not going to ding you if you don't, because we're so used to putting x first, right? But in math tradition, you put real part first, -44 plus 28i, done. So I'm not going to ding you if you write 28i minus 44. Okay, I don't think anyone does. Okay, here's another one that gets us ready for division, which we're also going to do. Okay, so go ahead and do this one. And if you do, you get 3 times 3 is 9, minus 24i plus 24i, and then minus 64, you guessed it, I squared. Everything's the same, isn't it? So we get 9. What happens here? Cancel. The imaginary pieces went away. And then we have minus 64 times what? -1. So we're looking at 9 plus 64. Do you see any imaginary pieces here? I don't either. So what we're getting is 73. A real number, not a complex number, not an imaginary number, a real number. And this is a clue. It should tip us to what we're going to do for division. Look at, aren't we looking at that a plus b, a minus b, a is equal to, it's the difference of squares thing again, right? Well, if you're easy peasy with multiplication and you've made it through chapter 7, this ain't going to be crazy either. It's not terrible. I think I just have one more example, but you can read this one. Okay, look. So someone said divide these two complex numbers together. What do we choose to do here? Where'd that come from? Look. See that? They're creating the difference of squares. Did I write it one more time? Okay, I'll write it. A plus b times a minus b is a squared minus b squared. And what happens is the inner and outer disappear, And that's what happened here to that example. The I terms disappear. That's how you divide. You don't do long division. You're going to do it just like we did when we're rationalizing the denominator. This is the same thing. It's like we're rationalizing the denominator to make this happen. So here's this one example for division with complex numbers. You ready? Let's do this one together. So we have, write it bigger, 7 plus 2i to be divided by 5 minus 4i. Yeah, there's no division here. We're not going to go, well, 5 minus 4i, long divide into it. No, we're not. We don't do that. Instead, we rationalize the denominator, and it's that fancy one, the one that we did back in section, what was it, 5, I think it was. Okay. If they have minus, we go plus. If I do it downstairs, I got to do it upstairs because that's equal to 1 now, and I'm doing it legally. But here's the other part of it. We want that difference of squares, baby. We want things to cancel in the middle. So here's our math. We have this times this. And unlike other problems, I multiply that out. In fact, you got 2 foils going on here. I call them foils. Whatever. You call it whatever you want. Okay. So the main thing I want to show you is the denominator, because that's why we're doing what we're doing, okay? So we get 5 times 5 is 25. We get plus 20i, you guessed it, minus 20i, and then minus 16, I squared. Remember that lesson from a few moments ago? Okay. While we're at it, we might as well do the top. So the top becomes 35. This is just whatever happens, happens. So we end up with plus 28i, and then plus 10i, and then plus 8i squared. Okay. So we're going to do some combining. These guys, what happens there? They drop out, they cancel. But not these guys. All right, so let's rewrite. We're almost done. We have 35, and those two up top make 38i, so plus 38i. And watch out, so many moving parts. Look at this. Remember this guy? What do we do there? -1. That's right. Back from beyond the looking glass. Here we have 25 minus 16 times who? You guessed it, -1. Are you going to do really well on these problems? I hope you are. So let's see. We have 35 plus 38i minus 8. And downstairs we have 25 plus 16. Okay. Isn't that weird? Turns into -1. So let's put the top together, and we have there 27 plus 38i, and downstairs it's wonderfully no I at all. We've just got a number, a real number. We've got 41. If you wrap your answer up right there, it's totally fine. But I'm kind of funny. I write it as real part plus imaginary part every time. So we end up with 27 over 41 real part plus 38 over 41i. So this is totally fine, but so is this. And that's it. That's it, baby. Let's study. Okay, next stop is chapter 8.